It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's event. The Provost Conversations on Online Learning feature public talks by leading experts on the future of education, particularly online education. Through such conversations, our aim is to share knowledge and insights to enhance teaching and learning efforts on campus and online. As you may know, in the past we invited several speakers who are involved in defining and shaping the future of online education, including Ananta Agrawal, founder and CEO of edX, and Daphne Kohler, founder of Coursera. Today, I'm delighted to introduce not one, but two great speakers from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. First, Adam Fein, who is UIUC's Assistant Provost for Educational Innovation. Adam is involved in shaping UIUC's strategy and providing campus-wide support for innovations in classroom and online education. John Hart is a professor in the Department of Computer Science. His research interests include computer vision, data visualization, and computational topology. And John is also the Executive Associate Dean of UIUC's Graduate College. We'll start with Adam and John giving presentations. Then I will be asking them a few questions that we collected beforehand, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. Please join me in welcoming Adam and John.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, first of all, let me return the thanks to Columbia University here. We're so thankful to be here and really glad you invited us. Particular thanks to Sandesh and Maurice and Suleiman for inviting us in. We've already had a couple opportunities to meet with a couple groups and had some great questions, so we hope to have more during this hour here today, hour and a half. I'm going to try and give a bit of an overview. I've spent a good amount of time in New York. I'm usually here either talking about education or playing music. In this case, I'm talking about education, but I like to come here and eat good food and play music or talk about education. So happy to be back in New York. I do really like talking about education. I've been at the University of Illinois for 16 years. I've always been involved in online education in some form. I was lucky enough to start around 2000 coordinating our university's second online program in the College of Education. Prior to coming into the Provost office, I served as the Associate Director for our Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. And I'll talk a bit more about that. And my PhD is in Educational Policy, Organization, and Leadership, where I look a lot at multimedia learning and its impact on learning performance. This is what my job really looks like on a daily basis. What I usually tell people is if I have innovation in my title and I'm not upsetting some people, then I'm probably not doing my job. I'm not pushing us forward fast enough. But a big part of my job, too, is talking to our audience, our students. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. In fact, just this year, we started the first Provost group for student group. We call it the Online Innovation Advisory Board, and it's just made up of our online students and our online students at a distance. It's been fascinating to hear more about what their challenges and opportunities are. The other place I test my ideas are with my kids, Jack and Charlie here. They don't know it, but they're my subjects A and B. And just kind of watching how they learn at home. This next generation is learning very differently, and part of my job, I feel like, is to prepare the university for those students. I was just talking the other day to a colleague who said, and I reminded that our freshman class didn't just stumble upon the iPad. They were actually 9 years old when it came out. So this is a group that's very comfortable multitasking, multimodal. So now let me tell you just a little bit about our university, and then I'll talk a little bit about our online initiatives, a bit about our infrastructure, and a little bit about what's the next 5 years might look like. And then John's going to take you through an in-depth look at one of our most innovative programs, the Online Masters of Computer Science. So if you don't know much about our university, it just turned 150 years old, which doesn't play as well here on the East Coast. but it's pretty old for us. We're an AAU research university, 25 Pulitzer Prizes, quite a few Nobel laureates from Illinois, ranked as a number 11 public university. We have lots of students, 44,000, about 32,000 undergrads, about 12,000 graduate students, and we're spread across 14 different academic colleges. We've done some pretty amazing things, particularly in the areas of engineering and computer science. Just a few of the companies that some of our students and learners started, including the first graphical browser, Netscape, it was called Mosaic, and then became Netscape. And PayPal, Lotus Notes, YouTube, and others. But first and foremost, and you saw this in our title, we are a land-grant university. So for those of you who don't know a whole lot about land-grant, this is an 1862 act, the Morrill Act. Justin Smith Morrill, congressman from Vermont, pushed this through. And what it did was designate 30,000 acres of public land to a university for the betterment of higher education at the time. Of course, that was first the state, and then later the country. And I'm going to be talking a lot about the globalizations of our land-grant mission today. Every state has at least one land-grant university. I believe it's Cornell in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So now a bit more about our online efforts. So why online, you might ask? Well, have you seen winter in Illinois? But seriously, there are lots of reasons to do online education. So you might know also, actually, there's a really cool timeline. One of your journalism professors, Audrey Waters, produced this timeline of teaching machines. And so one of the things on there you might have noticed, if you saw that, was in 1960, one of the first teaching machines, Plato, came from the University of Illinois. So we have a long history of using technology to teach. We also had, we have 21 years in the fully online space. 22, our first online course was in mathematics in 1995. And we had a degree that was fully online even all the way back in 1996 from our library school, which is now our information school. And we were the first land-grant university to partner with Coursera a whopping 5 years ago. And it seems strange that it was 5 years because we've done so much, and I'll talk about that more. So we have a good history, and we've done things in both the graduate and the undergraduate space. Far more programs in graduate, but quite a bit in the undergraduate too. So I think it's important that you can see what we've done in the undergraduate space. So in what I call the traditional online space, so let's just use that phrase for non-MOOC-based programs. We, again, started in 1996. The second one was the one I got the privilege of working on in 1998-99, which was from the College of Education. We now have 50 different degree programs across almost all of our colleges, including our very first doctorate out of the College of Education. It's an EDD. There's different options there. We have one bachelor's completion program fully online, and quite a few certificates. And so here's kind of an overall snapshot at all of our online activity before I get into more specifics. We have a lot of demand for this. So we're now up over 56,000 enrollments. Now that's everybody. Doesn't include our non-credit learners on Coursera. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But this is our distance students, graduate and undergrad, and also our residential students who might take a course or two as part of their portfolio during a semester. It's up again. It's been rising. It's up another 33% from last year, about over a 25,000 head count, so about on average 2 courses per year online for these students. Quite a few from international addresses, and just under 30 million in revenue. So let me take a second to talk a little bit about what we've done undergraduate before I jump back into graduate. Because you saw we only have one program undergraduate. And you know, we're a public university. We have a lot. Our bread and butter is our residential undergrads. But increasingly, they're interested in diversifying their schedule with at least one online course. And really we see a lot of this more and more in the fall and the spring. Maybe they take 3 on-ground courses and 1 online. But we've been highly successful in summer and winter, and I'll talk about winter next. But what we did, say, about 5 years ago is really take a look at the courses that our students were transferring in from other places, most commonly, say, the top 20 courses, and we started to put those online. And we have a great relationship with our local community colleges, so it wasn't, this was to be in conjunction with a lot of what we do in partnership with them. But there are a few challenges to our students in the summer, and one was they wanted to take a course from where they were already attending, so that familiarity. Also, content articulation. What I mean by that is, especially in, say, the life sciences and the disciplines that are moving very quickly, they might take a course somewhere else and get a bit old or outdated information. They would come back to campus, transfer that in, and not do very well. Get me a D or an F, and we wanted to provide a homegrown option for that. And then also just dealing with the transfer process. So these are really popular courses. As you can see, over 10,000 enrollments this past year. And we don't necessarily think of that as new revenue, but I kind of call it recaptured revenue. So that's been lucrative there too. We started a winter session, a 3-year winter session pilot 3 years ago. These are 4-week online courses. We have had 4-week courses in summer for decades, so it's not unusual to have a 4-week course. We limit students to they can only take 1 at a time. So, because these are pretty intense and they remain very high quality, so we want them to have a good experience. As you can see, more and more courses, more and more students interested. If a student had to drop a course in the fall, this is a good way to catch up. There are business courses available to non-business majors during winter, and that's the only time they're available. Certain courses, if you have a business minor, these are courses in high demand and gen ed courses. And as you can see, for example, 84 students of Illinois winter students felt the quality of interaction they had with their professors was better in these. So we really were intentional about what courses we chose, and it's been a very popular semester. In fact, our faculty senate voted to make it a permanent semester just this past year. Not without a lot of conversation. I'm glad to answer questions about that. We had to look at mean grade distribution across. We really want to make sure this is high quality and not too easy and not too difficult. So there's lots of data we looked at when doing this session. So now let me talk a little bit about our foray into the land of MOOCs. It all started with a weekend the summer of 2012, and you can see many of you here in this room may be in one of these groups. You might be a dean in the provost office, in the chancellor's office, faculty member, part of a legal contracts. These are groups that often work together, but I wouldn't say work together very quickly, if that's fair to say. Strangely enough, in 2012, our chancellor was able to work with this group over the course of a weekend to sign a contract with Coursera so that we could be part of the second group of universities that launched with Coursera, and again, the first land-grant university. And it really changed a lot of things on our campus. Now, there were challenges with this, lots of challenges, lots of questions that people asked. Could we explain to our accrediting body what we're doing here? And I'm glad to talk more about that. That's a long story. To our faculty senate, that we're stretching the boundaries of our land-grant mission in the right way and keeping quality at the top. Could we foster a truly collaborative and trustworthy relationship with a vendor? I've worked with many, many vendors. What kind of a partner would Coursera be? These were all risks we took, but we saw opportunities. We saw, again, the opportunity to extend the land-grant mission globally, for cross-university teams to work together. We talk about this a lot. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's happened a whole lot in this area. And again, the opportunity to truly kind of have a good university corporate partnership here. So, you know, the first steps were really critical here. We had to have a lot of open conversations around campus. One of the first things we did was set up a committee, what we called the MOOC. It was really the MOOC and Online Strategy Advisory Committee. John was a part of that. I was a part of that. A couple of deans, vice provosts, associate deans, real decision makers in the area. Not everybody was favorable, so we really got a nice mix of naysayers and people who saw the future here. And we started talking about what we should do. Now, as part of the Coursera agreement, we agreed to do 10 MOOCs very quickly, and we helped fund those from the Provost office. But where were we going to go from there? So we also had many, many conversations with our faculty senate. We needed to make an investment, so we hired, at a minimum, we hired 10 new positions in our Center for Innovation, Teaching and Learning, because guess what? The demand was already there. We were already kind of maxed out doing all the traditional online programs that I showed earlier on the slide. Many of those were already in existence, not all of them. But now we were going to do a bunch of MOOCs, and these were going to be super high quality and have lots of video, and so we needed to make an investment, particularly in the areas of instructional design, multimedia, and some in the marketing and recruitment area. So 5 years later, this is what this looks like at Illinois now. We have over 100 MOOCs across 7 different colleges. We have we had the first 3 degrees with Coursera. There's now 4. There's one also with HEC in Paris. The IMBA launched about 21 months ago, and the IMSA, our newest one from the College of Business, just a few months ago, and our Masters of Computer Science and Data Science, and John's going to be taking you in depth there, just over a year ago. We have 14 different specializations. Those are kind of certificates that can be non-credit, that can be credit. We should bring in around $10 million just from those programs this year, and then an additional $2 million from all the activity in the non-credit space. And this is kind of what the funnel has looked like for us. And this is important. So, you know, you'll see me referencing money, and I certainly don't want to understate that. That is a part of why we're doing this. I'm not going to pretend it's not. We're a public university. We're in a state that didn't have a budget for 2.5 years, and there's some real challenges for us. And even when we now have passed a budget, the allocation for higher education continues to decline. So we need to do these self-supporting programs that generate revenue so that we can do some of the activities, many in the liberal arts and sciences, that we want to do, but they have to be funded in other ways. But that's not the only benefit to doing what we're doing in this space. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So just a couple quick stories. So when the second MOOC we launched was a MOOC in microeconomic principles. And within days, that MOOC was crowdsourced, translated into 6 different languages. And that was really powerful. That was one of the first things we saw. We have another MOOC, and these are standalone MOOCs in a bit of a niche area, but it's in post-harvest crop loss. And so yes, we do have a nice variety in our standalone that aren't necessarily connected to the biggest markets, and I'll talk about that. Obviously, when we're doing degrees in business and data, we understand that there's a market there, but for our standalone MOOCs, this is a lot of our outreach to the world. And so it's a big difference in these courses when we talk about the globalization of our land-grant mission. It's one thing to talk about, hey, this is what it's like with crop loss post-harvest with wheat in central Illinois. And then you might say, I wonder what it's like in southern Europe or northern India. It's another thing to actually have people in your class from southern Europe and northern India, and you're discussing, well, this is how it worked here, how did it work there, in real time. That happened in this course. Even our lowest enrolled MOOCs have at least 1,000 people, and some have had up to 150,000 at different times. Now, as there are more and more MOOCs, it's more common for there to be more like 5,000 to 10,000. That's a huge amount of students and a lot of interesting learning that can happen in this space. And so that's what the funnel has provided us. So there's been 28 million different learners on Coursera. About 2.9 million have gone through our 100 MOOCs. About 76,000 of those have paid, and that's the non-credit pay, so that's the $79 for a verified certificate. And now over 1,200, and soon to be closer to 2,000 in January, will be taking courses for credit with Illinois. Our courses are rated really highly. We have non-credit learners from every country and credit learners from over 50 countries in every state. And here's, again, focusing on the finances, there are real benefits in each category here. So again, for the non-credit, no pay, great. That's education for the good of the world. It's brand exposure for Illinois. It's the extension of our land-grant mission. We have another group that pays a fee. It's generating some additional revenue. Then we have our degree students, additionally quite a bit of revenue. And One of the things I'm asked a lot is how much does it cost to produce a MOOC? I thought it costed, $250,000. Now, we never produced a MOOC that cost $250,000. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but ours were somewhere at first between probably 50 and 100, and really are now probably more between 30 and 50. But it's not fair to say that that MOOC cost $50,000 because we actually use those videos in many, many different places. So they're used in the MOOCs, like, for example, our Emergence of Life MOOC. That content is also used across one of the Geology 117, which is a popular lower division course. It's also used by Dr. Folk in many of his professional development activities. So part of why we wanted to do this was so we could spend all this time creating this really high-level content and use it in multiple places. So we're seeing that. So our residential students are also benefiting from what we're putting into these MOOCs. Another really significant thing about what we're doing with degrees is we've talked about stackability in this. You hear that word a lot, stackability in this space. I think we're truly achieving that now. And I think the key to that, again, with a student focus is we don't have to sell or provide more education than a student needs. So we want to have options for students no matter where they are on their educational journey, if you will. So within our IMBA, here's just 6 options. So all the way from the free course, non-credit, to you pay for a verified certificate. So it's still a non-credit course, but you have to go through identity verification, make sure it's you get a credential for that. You can take a course for credit. You can take a whole specialization, so a grouping of courses, non-credit. Blue's non-credit, orange is credit. You can take that same certificate for credit, or you can do all the way up to a degree. We have many people start here and decide, hey, I really like this, I'm going to move here. Or not. And they're not pressured to do otherwise. But the fact is there are a bunch of options for them. And that's something that's been really powerful and contributed to our ability to scale these programs. That's just a nice map kind of showing you a little bit more about where we're reaching students. I thought it might be nice for you to hear quickly from one of our IMBA students. So, we think our programs are highly interactive, but it's great for me to say, but how about one of our own students?
Since June, I have probably made 3 or 4 really good friends in the program. I never feel like there's not someone to work with. Anytime I want to talk about homework or review concepts, get ready for an assignment, even if we're not teamed up together, we still come back together and cross-check what our teams did to see if we're all on the same page. It's really great to have that network of colleagues out there that you can turn to if you're feeling confused about something, because at the end of the day, there's one faculty member and however many hundred of us out there, but we can come together and solve problems together, which is great. Great.
And there are a lot of assignments that take that in mind, that we have a lot of students that work together. Many of these are working professionals, so we see that across the different programs. So I took you through our online activity. I would like to take a moment to talk a little bit about the infrastructure. A common question I ask when I talk across various universities is, well, how were you able to do all this? Certainly we'll get questions about how faculty are motivated to do this, and we can get into that. But what does the infrastructure look like? And it certainly, at least from my earlier meeting, sounds like you have really good infrastructure here at Columbia, but I'll tell you what this looks like at Illinois. So to me, there are 4 major pieces to having success in this area. Obviously, you have to have academic units. It all starts at the academic unit that want to do this. It needs support from the Office of the Provost from the top. You need a technology backbone for these things. But I would say we were missing the 4th piece. Because what we had was 3 different offices spread across 3 different units doing very similar things: faculty development, educational technology training, online course and program design. And when the academic units wanted to do something, they didn't even know where to go. And it often was where you'd go where you first went. And certainly they weren't going to be shared with any of the other units. There's a lot of territory battles. Fortunately, our former chancellor and provost saw this, and our former vice provost had said, this is inefficient. We need to do better here. So again, here are some of the challenges: decentralized activity, duplication of work, no one-stop shop. So we really needed to create a one-stop shop. So what we did was create the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. I referenced that before, and brought those three. So our Academic Technology Services group in Central IT, the Center for Teaching Excellence, that's where a lot of the faculty development work was going on in our Office of Online and Continuing Education. Now one major centralized unit, it's about 110 FTE, it's a big unit. And you know, working with teaching and learning across the modalities. So there's not, certainly a lot of the support for online learning comes here, but it's not just online. It's getting, that line's blurring anyway. As I've already talked about, you know, what we produce for online is also very good for a blended course, a flipped course, the face-to-face. I'm not even sure what that is anymore. So, so this office works across the modalities, and it really completed the circle. And while we had a lot of activity and have since 1995, it really took off around the time we joined Coursera when CITL was formed, and much less confusion for our academic units and faculty. So here's some of the services provided, just to give you a quick taste. There's a measurement and evaluation unit. They do the end of course surveys, online strategy development, which includes instructional design, multimedia, compliance. So even if one of our academic units does a majority of the development, which sometimes happens, a lot of it's centralized, but certain units have more capability to have their own unit, it has to go through CITL for compliance. And by that I mean copyright, accessibility for our students with disabilities, and a final kind of QC check. Student support, I mentioned the instructional spaces. So again, we're not just working with fully online innovations, but thinking about the physical classroom, movable furniture, writable walls, technology in the physical spaces. We have a data analytics group, marketing, recruitment, and registration services. Again, kind of a one-stop shop. And again, what this did was kind of bring into balance the bottom up, all the energy from the bottom up that had been going on for years, and the recent support, particularly we've had from our Chancellor, Provost, and the Deans. So just a couple more minutes on next steps, and I'm going to turn it over to John here, because I think it's important. So we have a lot more work to do. There are a number of challenges we still have. I think John might talk about that some, but and I'm glad to cover that in the Q&A. But I think part of why we are where we are today is because we started working on this 5 years ago and really thought about where should we be in 2017. And so one of the things we're working with as part of our online courses, and not just our online courses, is virtual and augmented reality. This is a great example here. So we have wonderful professor, Dr. Bob Parr. He teaches Political Science 244, and every year for decades he's brought students to Yellowstone, and that's awesome. But not all students can go to Yellowstone. Maybe they can't afford it, or maybe they're physically not able to go to Yellowstone. So we started about 3 years ago. We're going to bring Yellowstone to you, and we sent a couple people to Yellowstone. We filmed it, and this online course received like a 4.9 out of 5 rating. It was a highly popular course. It actually looks at the politics of national parks, and that was a great first step. But what we want to do next is actually send a videographer and do the 360-degree video, so we can really take them inside of Yellowstone. So let me show you where we're at now with that. This is not yet the VR stuff, but take a moment to kind of see where we went from completely text-based to starting to take people inside the parks.
All of these things start to decompose. As they decompose, they return nutrients to the soil. All those nutrients from the ancient lake bed then provide nutrients that are really important for the Hayden and Lamar valleys. That's why these are rich grasslands, and that's why herbivores like these areas, and it's why wolves have come into these areas in order to prey on the herbivores.
As part of our study of nature and nature, we'll talk more about how these species interact with one another in ecosystems at both the large scale and the small. Now let's look a little closer to Mount Washburn and examine the landscape near our feet. We can see the Yellowstone River below us, which drains from Yellowstone Lake. Near us, it digs into the ground and carves out the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. This is not the Grand Canyon that you know in Arizona. That's properly the Grand Canyon of the Colorado, which is similarly carved out by the Colorado River. As we look closer, in and around the canyon, you can see steam coming out of the ground in many places. That is, in fact, steam.
So that just gives you an example of, again, how we're moving in the right direction. Now, my research actually is in multimedia learning and learning performance. And so one of the things we're looking at is when does this have an impact on learning, and whether or not the instructor is visible, whether it's studio produced or on location, and a number of other measures. And I'm glad to talk to anyone about that who will listen to me and want to talk more about that. But this has had a huge impact on the learning in these courses. And again, the next step is to really have full immersion. One of the things, and I'll end here, and so this is one of the things that excites me the most. We have an amazing professor, Dr. Madhu Viswanathan, in the College of Business, and he works in subsistence marketplaces. It's his work. And so I say here, the globalizing the land-grant mission isn't just a catchy phrase, it can change lives. And so what we're going to do, again, is we're going to send videographers to these marketplaces. We're going to do some 360-degree filming, and the next step, just one assignment in this course, is going to be immersion in these markets. It's one thing to think about what we can do to help in these places and build these markets up. It's another thing to give the students a chance to be in these markets and experience what it's like to work and live. And so this is what we're doing and really proud of in online education right now. So I'll end there and hand things over to John to talk in depth about the computer science program. Questions?
Thanks, Adam. Give me just a moment to find my slides. There we go. Okay, I want to drill down into the details of one of these programs that we created based on our Master of Computer Science. Here's a graph I generated based on our online Master of Computer Science. Right here you've got our PhD. Our PhD applications have been relatively steady. Interest in computer science at the PhD level has been relatively steady. At the master's level, it's just skyrocketing. And so we have all this interest in our Master of Science degree on campus. We have all this interest in a Master of Computer Science, which is a professional degree in computer science on campus. And here's the interest in our online degree in computer science, our master's degree. It's just flat. So we're not capturing that level of interest. And this is after we were spending tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing and advertising for our online Master of Computer Science degree. It just was not doing very well. We were able to market in India and got quite a bit of success in India, but not really in the US. At the same time, we saw these data science degrees popping up, and there's a big interest in data science across the nation. Lots of industry demand for data science. I think right now there's some 200,000 jobs each year in data science that go unfilled because there's not skilled labor available to fill those jobs. And that's really what the land-grant mission of the university is about, is being able to provide the nation with that skilled labor for those in-demand industries. Originally it was in the mechanical arts and agriculture, but now if we had the Morrill Act today, it would be data science would be one of the fields for sure. And so we wanted to be able to fill that in ways we hadn't been able to do before. And so we created the Master of Computer Science in Data Science, which is really just the Master of Computer Science, but with coursework selected that focuses on the data sciences. And so we already had this professional degree in computer science at the master's level that was in demand. And we took some of the 8 core areas, and we looked at the ones that were most important for data science, and they're databases, particularly data mining, systems, and especially cloud computing. HCI, in particular data visualization, and AI, in particular machine learning. And then we added some coursework from our iSchool and from our stats department to fill things out for data sciences. And what we ended up having is a Master of Computer Science that was fulfilling our ordinary Master of Computer Science program, but put out data scientists, put out skilled professionals in the data sciences with these capabilities in data mining, cloud computing, data visualization, and machine learning. And if you look at the Glassdoor's average salary for a data scientist, it's $120,000 a year. That's pretty good for a year or two of work in data sciences on top of your bachelor's degree. If you look at Glassdoor for a data analyst, it's about $60,000 a year. And the difference between a data scientist and a data analyst is science. And in particular, computer science, you know, the cloud computing and data mining that you need in order to handle large data sets, big data. And that's what we tried to capture with this degree. The other nice feature of this is that we were not proposing a new degree. And so a new degree takes us 2 years, sometimes 3 years to get out the door. And what we did was we retrofitted an existing degree in a way that didn't need much approval. And we were able to launch this almost instantaneously in April 2016 was when we started to announce the degree so that we could take admissions into the program. And that was basically after getting a phone call from Deanna Ranieri at the time. And that was in the fall of 2015. So it was just like 6 months later we were able to get the degree off the ground. The other result is that the transcripts in the degree, they don't say data science. They just say Master of Computer Science. And they don't say online either. It's the same degree that everybody gets, whether you take the courses online or on campus. We hold all of our courses to the exact same requirements and specifications. And this really doesn't seem to matter to students. They can put anything they want on LinkedIn and on their resumes, and they do, and that's really what's important to them and their employers, and then we can back it up with a degree. So we don't give course credit for MOOCs. We do not give university credit for just taking a MOOC. What we do is we use the MOOCs for the lecture portion of our courses. And then on top of that, we have additional material that's available only to the students admitted to our program who are taking the class for credit. And that additional material is a comprehensive proctored exam for the first half of class, that's a midterm, and a comprehensive proctored exam for the second half of the class, final exam, and some additional assignments and projects that are TA graded and interactions with the TA and the instructors. And so we're able to take our existing MOOC material that's available for the global learning community and package that up into an online course, very similar to our other online courses, but on this scalable platform, scalable MOOC platform, and be able to deliver these courses over our ordinary 15-week semester. And we run these concurrently with our on-campus versions of these courses, and the students interact. Our on-campus students are interacting with our online students, asking questions of each other and answering each other's questions. And that helps the online students understand that they're learning the same material that our on-campus students are learning. And also, so the MOOC portion is just the lecture course. And if you go to one of our MOOCs that's on the global platform that you don't have to be admitted to, you can just take on the Coursera platform, it'd be like sitting in one of our classes. You'd be listening to the lectures, you'd be learning the material, but you wouldn't be going through the proctored exams or doing some of the TA graded projects that we require for our credit learners. And these MOOCs consist of lesson videos. One course is 2 MOOCs, plus the additional material for assessments. Each of those MOOCs, the video each of those MOOCs runs 4 to 6 weeks long. Each of those weeks consists of around 3 modules, 2 to 4 modules. Each module consists of 3 lesson videos, and each lesson video is about 10 minutes. You know, one of the humbling things we've found is that when we take our course lectures and we condense them down into the lesson videos for MOOCs, that it's ridiculous. Like an hour lecture ends up being 10 minutes of video or something like that. It's very, you know, you have to do some introspection after that. But we're covering around 90 minutes of lesson video per MOOC week. And then our course lectures usually consist of 8 to 12 weeks of MOOC video with a break in between for a proctored midterm and then a break at the end for the proctored final and any final material. And then we have assessments, and for computer science we often have programming projects and other quizzes and exams and so on. The quizzes, we try to use the weekly quizzes, the quizzes on the Coursera platform, we use those as formative. Often the exams consist of the same material that we go over in the quizzes, and the students want to use the quizzes to study for the exams, and they want to keep retaking those quizzes. So we just have the quizzes be pass-fail. If you get over 70% right, then it's a pass, and then you can take them infinitely many times. So you can keep taking a quiz until you pass it. It's worth maybe a percentage point of your grade just to make sure that you do it, but really to use it as a learning tool and not so much as an assessment tool. The exams are summative. We make them multiple choice. They're also on the Coursera platform, but they're also proctored, and students have to pay for the proctoring, and it's ProctorU, an online proctoring facility that takes control of the student's computer, including the webcam, to make sure they're not cheating. You know, I'm not naive enough to say that cheating doesn't happen, but I do believe, having looked at some of the literature, that we have less cheating in our online courses than we do in our on-campus courses, and I think that's a step in the right direction. And then we have the assignments, which are auto-graded, and we have students write code, and that code gets executed along with reference code for some randomly generated input, and then we compare the output to make sure that the students' results are matching the results we expect. And auto-grading has a lot of real good advantages for learning. Again, we let the students submit multiple times until they can get it right, especially, you know, in these infrastructures. But you know, for teaching my on-campus course, I used to just have this wide open. I would teach graphics, and one of my assignments would be, say, write a flight simulator, and you know, leave the details to the students. And the TAs would have to spend a month grading all the students' assignments for that, and that was not good for the TAs who had to spend a month grading the assignments. It was not good for the students who weren't getting their assignments graded for a whole month, and they weren't getting the benefit of the TAs because the TAs were off grading their assignments. And if you give a lot of thought, and it takes a lot of thought on the part of the instructor to think of how to make an assignment auto-graded, you have to completely change the specification. I could no longer be lazy and say, write a flight simulator. I had to be very structured about what the students were handing in, and giving a lot more support than doing this. And so it was a lot more work for me. But the result is an auto-graded assignment means that the TAs have much more time to spend with the students, that the students get instant feedback on their assignments. They know what they're getting right, what they're not getting right, and it just greatly accelerates the learning process. And then finally, we're doing everything on the global platform with peer grading, on the for-credit platform with TA grading. And in both cases, we have to have a very carefully specified rubric for all of our assignments, which isn't necessarily happening with our campus versions of these classes. Admissions, we use the exact same admissions criteria on campus as for our online students, both in the scalable platforms and our more traditional online platforms. There is a difference between admissions for a professional degree, a coursework-based degree in computer science versus a Master of Science in computer science. With a Master of Science, you're writing a thesis, so you have to take all the same courses plus make an original contribution to the field. And so we're much more picky about students getting into the MS program than we would be for the MCS program, because the requirements are so much higher for the Master of Science with the thesis required. But with that said, we have a baseline admissions requirements. You have to have a bachelor's degree. You can't get a master's degree if you don't have a bachelor's degree. But that doesn't necessarily have to be in computing. You have to have a 3.2 GPA. You have to have English proficiency, and you have to have some key prerequisites in order to get through our computer science courses. And so we make sure you have those key prerequisites. One of the things we discovered with this degree, the Master of Computer Science and Data Science, is that students started using it as an MBA. And we would get students from all disciplines signing up for this, and we had to then make sure that they wanted to tack on this data science degree on top of their other discipline bachelor's degree. And then we just had to make sure that they had the appropriate prerequisites and passed all the other proficiencies. For our campus MCS, we only have room for a certain number of seats. Our buildings are only so big. But for our online programs, we don't have those limitations, and so we can let all of the qualified applicants through. And so the first time we rolled out, we managed our selectivity, matched campus norms for selectivity for master's programs. You know, the mix between domestic and international students, we got a lot more domestic students than we usually get for our graduate programs. And then Still we have an issue recruiting females, but the flexibility of one of these online scalable degrees where you're paying a tuition rate that's based on per credit tuition instead of range-based tuition means that you can only pay for courses in semesters that you're taking courses. Allows you to take some time off, and I think that opens up the field quite a bit. The yield is incredible, 92% yield, which means that students are only applying for this and paying the $70 or $90 application fee if they're then going to take you up on the offer if they're admitted. And that's different than our on-campus admissions. The yield is nowhere near that. And then finally, students, we've got students from 30 different states, 20 different countries, all the different fields. The blue is engineering, the orange are the sciences, the light blue is business, and gray is social sciences and humanities. And we're getting students all over the place wanting to tack on this data science degree on top of their bachelor's degree. We've done some measurements comparing student performance for our on-campus courses and our online courses. And students in the MCSDS are doing as good as the students on campus when given the same midterm over the same material. We've got the same number of students, 3.6% for our MCSDS, not making satisfactory progress towards the degree, and that matches the performance. Actually, it's better than the performance for online and commensurate with our on-campus students for getting through the program. We can compare this to Georgia Tech's online Master of Science in Computer Science. This is their growth curve. Their growth curve is significantly steeper. They're much cheaper than we are. They're up to 5,200 students. We're only up to about 500 students now. We've learned a lot from Georgia Tech. They've been very forthcoming and very helpful with our program and giving us information from their program as well. But there's some differences between the programs. Again, our cost is about $20,000. It's $19,200 in tuition, and you pay that per credit, and so you take the classes when you can. You have to pay some additional fees for the actual MOOCs. Yeah, the students pay the proctors directly. They have to pay for any Amazon Web Services or cloud computing. They have to pay for their own books. One of the big limiters for scale that we have is TAs, and so we have mechanisms for recruiting TAs from our other graduate programs in order to satisfy the TA need. We need about 30 TAs for every 1,000 students, and that's our real limiter for scaling up into the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 student level. And we're very happy to report that our retention rate for the program is 94.3%. That's very good compared to attrition rates in any graduate program. And our biggest challenge is course development. We finished up our course development for MCSDS courses this coming year. And so we're going to be adding new courses to fill this out into a general Master of Computer Science degree that's beyond just data sciences. And we've developed a new development option. I think one of the questions that I got about this degree from many people and from Columbia in particular is how did you convince your faculty to do this? How did you convince them to do this degree? And that's one thing, and we were successful in doing that. But how do you get faculty to do anything? And it takes somewhere between 450 and 600 hours of work to develop one of these courses. In a 15-week semester, 40 hours a week, 40 hours a week times 15 weeks is 600 hours. That's all of the hours in a semester needed to develop one of these courses. It's a tremendous amount of investment that a faculty member needs to make in order to get one of these courses off the ground. It's the hardest you'll ever have to work on developing a course, but the result is a course that once deployed is very easy to teach. It takes very little effort once it's out the door, and the students really appreciate the effort that you put into the course, and not necessarily require the effort once the course is deployed. We were available for office hours for about an hour a week, and the students seemed to enjoy that. I ended up on I taught a course this summer And I just kind of sat around and let the thing happen and ended up on a Teachers Ranked Excellent as a result. But it was because of all the time I put in ahead of time to design that course. And so we've tried to split up course development across several semesters. We have a semester of development where we develop all of these things. And then we have a pilot semester where we actually run the course in MOOC form and in other forms so that students can try out on a limited number of students. We have a pilot right now with just 3 students in it, 3 advanced students to see. And we discovered that all of the assessments don't work, and we had to rethink all of the assessments for the course. And also, you know, when your faculty member has the best intentions to develop the course in this semester, you know what's going to happen. They're going to fall behind, and this gives them time to catch up, especially when you've got students demanding the material that's not ready yet. That's a great motivation for the faculty member to catch up. So we have that pilot semester before we actually launch the course at scale, and that seems to have worked out well for us. So that's kind of the details of the MCSDS program. I can go ahead and back up here because it's got this nice slide there. And then that's it for me. Adam, we want to come up, and I think maybe we've got some time for questions. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam and John, for a lot of information to digest for us. I just have a few questions before we open up the floor for questions. And you actually have answered a number of the questions I had and preempted me. So I'll start with the question about buy-in from your campus, not only from the faculty, but also from the senior leadership of the university. How did you go about offering some of your most successful degree programs online at a significant discount?
I'm going to answer for MBA. I think that's the big one.
The MBA was first. I mean, first and foremost, it really mattered that our dean of the business school was 100% behind this. And I was saying earlier, it was their 100-year anniversary last year, and they really wanted to do something significantly innovative to kind of mark that. And they really felt like this was a space that they could own. They knew potentially we'd be the first kind of massive or MOOC-based online program, and that excited the faculty. And you certainly have to have that if you're going to do this. As John mentioned, it's a big task, often in addition to all the research you're doing and teaching assignments. So, and we as I mentioned, we have a supportive chancellor and provost, and it wasn't. Our MOOC activity was not our first online activity. So the fact that we had infrastructure in place already, we had done fully online degrees. Our oldest one in our information school, library and information school, has been very successful. In fact, there are more students online in that college than there are on ground. And it's a #1 ranked I school in the country. So all those things played into it.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that, I think one of the things I remember when the MBA was being approved in this format was the significant amount of advertising and marketing investment that needed to go to recruit every single one of those MBA students, and having a program on this platform through Coursera and their funnel meant that investment per student just to get them to apply was significantly reduced. And so there's some benefits there. Even though you're offering the MBA more cheaply, you're also reducing the cost needed to recruit students into that MBA.
My second question has to do with the students that you now have online. So you mentioned that you have the same admission criteria as for your on-campus students. But given that you are growing at significantly your potential alumni base, have you heard from your alumni about what they think of you growing the number of graduates from your programs?
I can answer for business again.
Yeah, I think that's the.
That was a definite concern for Dean Brown. It was Jeff Brown is our Dean of Engineering, and I've heard him talk, or we've co-presented before, and he was pleasantly surprised that when he went to our the alumni base from the College of Business, particularly some of the key alumni, they were very excited about this idea. You know, I think our College of Business has been known as an innovative College of Business, and so they kind of saw that as an extension of what they were a part of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So not a lot of resistance there. I think Jeff sold it well, and now they've seen the early results, and they've got to, we've had meetups in different cities, so we have over 1,000 students in the program, so maybe we're in San Francisco or Chicago or London or India, and we've had alumni join with the current students. It's absolutely fantastic what happens in that space.
And then my final question is impact, either felt or expected, on your on-campus programs, not only the ones that for which you're now offering an online version, but also for other on-campus programs. Is there a pressure on those programs to also go online? How is this cannibalizing your existing on-campus programs?
So for computer science, we just simply cannot keep up with demand. We're turning away students at the undergraduate level that have 34 ACT and 4.0 grade point average in high school. We just cannot educate the number of students that apply to us, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, just based on our capacity. And so we've been looking at scalable programs to try to meet the demand for over 10 years, and you know, the MOOC platforms like the Coursera platform are the only ones that we've seen that really allow education of that quality at that scale that have been anywhere near successful. And so we've really embraced those to meet that demand. I know other areas may not be facing similar demand, but in those areas, it's not really a zero-sum game. You're not talking about the same applicants as you would for your on-campus program. You're really talking about applicants that may not have been able to study full-time in a certain location. These are people that already have jobs. These are people that are raising children. These are people that have other responsibilities that keep them from being on a campus, being able to study at a full time at a very rapid pace. And so the online asynchronous nature of this mode of education is really useful. You've got video lessons that are broken up into 10-minute chunks, so you can squeeze one in when you've got time, or you can binge them on a weekend when you can get to those. And you're paying per credit hour instead of paying one lump sum, so that if something comes up with work or with life and you have to take a semester or two off, you can, and you're not paying extra because of it. You take the courses when you can so that you can complete the degree. The whole nature of stackability, the idea of going through some of our MOOCs that we have on the global platform, let people know that they can get through the material in one of our classes, that they have enough prerequisites to understand this material, and then they can turn that into a credit-bearing course, a certificate, or even a degree, when they maybe couldn't do that, didn't have that feeling before, didn't have that confidence before. All of that means that you're not dealing with the same students, you're not cannibalizing anybody, you're just growing the educational opportunities for a greater population.
Yeah, it's the same that we see in the College of Business, and really across. I mentioned we have almost 50 traditional online options. We haven't seen any decline there. If anything, it's brought more attention to the Illinois brand. So, for the programs that we already had a program in place, either we were fine transitioning that to kind of a program at scale, or it's a different audience. In the two programs in business, the Masters of Accountancy and also certainly in the MBA, it's a larger domestic audience than what we see residentially. It's a larger international audience.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open up the floor for questions. We have mics on both sides of the room. If you could please first introduce yourself and then ask a question.
So once a course is produced, could you speak about what sort of the life cycle of that content is? How do you keep it updated? Can it be piecemeal updated? What's the feedback you get from students with varying qualities within a single course? And whose responsibility is it to sort of oversee and make sure that everything stays relevant?
Good, yeah, especially in computer science. It's, we get this feedback from students all the time. We're very, very attentive to these students. The Coursera infrastructure and the staff and the platform provide students with many more avenues for feedback to us than we've had in other courses. And so we hear from the students. These students are accustomed to learning in the MOOC format. They've embraced that form of learning. And because they come from that environment, they have higher expectations than I think our campus students do in those respects. They want example problems worked out. They want things in a more practical application example instead of just a blackboard filled with equations and theory. They demand that from us, and in many cases, many of our professors just aren't accustomed to that, and so we've had to add that material to our classes as a result of student demand. We've also added additional discussion sessions with TAs, where the TAs are creating videos, working out the problems that the professors have posed, doing things in more detail as additional material that the students really appreciate. So there is that feedback loop. We also, the students demand the latest, greatest, programming language, framework, infrastructure for their programming assignments, and we're constantly towing the line between teaching fundamentals that will still be relevant 10 years from now and the latest, greatest platform, which won't last, but maybe 3 to 5 years. We want to teach students things that they'll use throughout their career, and so some of this is on us to communicate that appropriately to these MOOC learners who are are both learning very fundamental things in credit-bearing degrees, but also going to YouTube to try to figure out how to change the screen on their cell phone. You get very practical things and very fundamental things, and so the demand is on us to constantly refresh that material to at least ensure the practicality of what we're teaching. With that said, we also have a pattern of updating our courses every 2 to 3 years to make sure that they're up to date with that material.
And part of what takes so much time in the initial design is that you're creating it in a modular fashion. So you might keep modules 1, 2, and 3, but for the information in module 4, the platform changed. We're going to swap that out and put it in as much as we can anyway.
Please.
Do you have a system set up for sort of a percentage of that course, the revenue that course generates gets fed back into it to sort of make sure that it's all paid for and it's not going to go defunct or anything?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And
do you mind sharing the details on that?
The college keeps the majority of the tuition.
Yeah.
And what the college does with the department is up to the college, but it's they know they have to give a appropriate sum back to the department. They've made the investment, the larger investment.
Yeah, and we're innovating in teaching and learning and in compensation and all sorts of other motivational techniques to make sure that these things stay up to date.
Do you have an idea on the percentage? You said initially a course might be 50 to 100,000 to produce, right?
Initially that was the cost. I think we've got it down closer to 30,000 now. This is some to do with some of the research a group of us are doing on, when there's learning performance impacts with Hollywood-style video versus iPad instructor-produced video. But the college gets 90% of what comes back to the campus. 10% stays with the Provost office.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Catherine Ross from the Center for Teaching and Learning. How do you handle support for developing faculty's teaching capacities in an online environment?
That's a great question. So I mentioned the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. We have all kinds of methods for doing this. So we have workshops and we have one-on-one, and we have anybody can go right now on your tablets, phones, laptops. If you do a Google search for University of Illinois online course in a box, you'll see an online course in a box, and we kind of lay out the playbook for you really for faculty. Here are all the things, if you're going to do this by yourself or as a supplementary guide to what we do, especially for the MOOCs, we kind of surround the faculty with a team of people so they can lean on them as much or as little as they want. But we've also kind of opened the playbook up, and here are the best practices across everything from accessibility to chunking the information to how to appropriately record your video.
Can we have the microphone handed to Professor Tsivides?
Yeah.
Hi, Yanis Tsivides from Electrical Engineering. What is the size of the administrative personnel needed to run this effort is my first question. I have one more.
It's a good question. So most of our online programs, certainly the MOOC-based ones that are very large, have a director involved. Usually that's a faculty member. John is the director for the MCSDS. It's not always. It's sometimes an academic professional that works very close with the faculty. So at minimum, as a director of online programs, usually there are a couple of other additional staff in the college, particularly in the way of admissions and student services. That's kind of the model for the MCSDS. Other colleges like the College of Business have decided to create their own e-learning infrastructure. They have instructional designers and media professionals. Most of our colleges lean on the Center for Innovation, Teaching, and Learning to provide those services. But I'd say at minimum, a director, like a project coordinator and an admissions officer.
Yeah. Right now we're doing it with basically 3 people in computer science for about 500 students, but that's going to have to scale as the number of students go up, obviously. And that's just in computer science. We're also relying heavily on our Center for Innovation and Teaching and Learning to do the video development and the instructional development for each of the courses. There's all the faculty that are involved in producing the material, and each one of us has counterparts over in Coursera that are handling their end of both recruiting and student services and platform issues. So there's a lot of people involved, but actually in the department it can be compact as long as you're willing to rely on people outside your department to do those jobs. I think when we worked it out for MCSDS for advising, not just admissions, but advising students on what classes to take, we wanted to make sure each student could talk with an advisor for at least 1 hour each semester. And so that gives you an idea of the scale of the staff you need just to do the advising for the students. And then you also need staff to be able to answer a tremendous number of questions students have about these innovative programs. Are the degrees the same? You know, do I have to pay everything up front? You know, a million questions. And you can put all this information online, but you still have to be able to answer these questions, because students won't find that information necessarily.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Are the tests for the degree programs proctored? And if so, do you change the assessments and tests from term to term?
Yeah, they are proctored, and that can be an area where faculty have to be involved each time the course is being developed. We're trying to move away from that with test banks, question banks, and be able to create databases of questions that cover each of the learning objectives of the course, and that way the questions can be different from semester to semester, but they can also be different from student to student, and you can normalize that across students both in class and across several semesters. We don't have the infrastructure available yet to do that, but we will shortly.
Thank you. Is this on?
I can hear you.
Thanks for the talk. I was an undergrad at U of I, so I can relate to that snow-covered quad quite well. I'm just wondering, I'm from the libraries, and I'm wondering if you've had any interaction or partnerships with the libraries around either support or modules for these courses.
Yeah, the library's been a great partner for online education from the beginning. It doesn't hurt that the first program was out of the library school. But they've been, for example, very early on, they put together some what they called LibGuides, online guides to help students who can't wander into our huge and famous library, rather have to access all the journals online. And there are a lot of wonderful tools for that now, but kind of step by step how to do that. And they keep that fresh and updated. And they're always come. They've helped a lot with the copyright. So that's a partnership between the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning and the library. Certain librarians who are dedicated to copyright. So yeah, they're great partners. In fact, our interim provost right now is the dean of the library school, or the dean of the library, and he's a very forward-thinking fellow. You're welcome.
Hi, sorry. I'm Peter Kingett from Electrical Engineering. I have a question if the experience with online courses, if it has given you any inputs on how to improve the on-campus offerings. Specifically, what limitations do you find in the online sphere that we could use to improve the on-campus experience to make it unique and differentiated from what you can do online?
That's interesting. Yeah, online is so successful that we need to use it to help the on-campus students. Well, one thing we have seen with several of our classes, the text information systems in the MCSDS in particular, but in many of our other classes, is faculty utilizing the materials they develop for the online class for their classes, and you can use that material to flip the classes, and students have been quite receptive to that. If you just show up for a lecture, you know, day after day, see the number of students actually showing up for these lectures will go down precipitously. But by having some of the drier material that you would use for the lectures available in these video lessons, you can spend the class time working out problems, either in groups or as the entire class. And the students are really receptive to being able to do that. And so that's one area where the online materials work their way back into the campus class. The other is that different students learn differently, and some students really learn well in that kind of classroom lecture environment, interactive, and raise their hands and talk with the instructor. And many other students, don't. I mean, they go to class, they have trouble concentrating on the material that's coming out for an hour to an hour and a half to sometimes 3 hours at a time. It's difficult for them to concentrate. They don't interact. They don't ask questions. And they're just not getting anything out of the classroom environment. It's good to have these other options available for them, even if they're learning on campus.
Yeah, that's a really good point, too, because as I mentioned, again, the media that we develop for these MOOCs is used in these different areas, and so we've had numerous students, residential students, come up and say, it's really helpful for me to be able to rewind, pause Professor so-and-so's lecture. I didn't quite understand this. Just because a student is sitting in the seat of your lecture doesn't mean they're listening. Or everybody spaces out a little bit, we know this. And so just the opportunity to be able to go back over a key point is really valuable across. That's for all of our students, fully online, blended, face-to-face. I think another piece that I've heard, certainly in my work in the College of Education, I've taught in their e-learning master's program. And the amount of preparation you do for these courses is not the same that you would do for an on-campus course. I'm not saying it's any of you, but we have some faculty who might show up on the first day of class and have that syllabus from last year and just kind of go with the flow there. That cannot happen online. It just won't work because you release your whole course. It's very public. Whether you like it or not, students can steal information. That's a whole other conversation. We have lots of protections, and we have lots of provisions for sharing in creative ways too. But you have to put some preparation into this. And of course, when you do that, you probably come up with a better course and a more updated course. And so lots of faculty have said, number one, that was grueling. My God, that took a lot of work. And number two, I'm so glad I did it. It changed the way I do my teaching and the way I think about this course. And thank you. So that's a pretty common return from faculty across the disciplines.
So a follow-up to Professor Kingett's question, what would you say is the percentage of courses that have been flipped on campus as a result of creating these online courses? What percentage on average of the course is being flipped, and how much more work do faculty have to do now for the on-campus students to add more active learning modules?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any measurements for how many on-campus courses have changed because of their online offerings. But even with our traditional online offerings, I know having the lecture videos available online has been helpful for some of those classes too. Maybe half, just to a very first order guess. And you know, flipping the classroom gives the instructor more time to work through examples, more time to interact with the class on a particular problem, to work on some of those practical cases that students really want to those concrete examples to solidify their understanding of a topic that we just don't get now. So there's some effort in the preparation of that, but I mean, it's nowhere near the amount of effort that goes into planning out the course and recording the videos and so on, and packaging one of these courses up for that. So it's a small increment above that.
So once you go through that process, that material is available to do that. I don't know the percentage either, but anecdotally, certainly, it's increasing every semester. So I mentioned briefly that I also work with what we call our Illinois Space Advisory Committee, and so now we have between 14 and 20 what we call iFlex classrooms, these flexible learning spaces. And so now when a professor wants to flip their classroom, we can put them in an appropriate classroom to do that. It's really set up for more active collaborative work. So because they're not lecturing, that students already got the lecture online, and we're coming to class to do deep dives into and problem solve together, co-create the material. And largely students really like this. I mean, some students don't love group work. That's fair. There are issues with group work when 2 of the 3 students you're working with don't show up and things. So we work through all of that. That's a real part of teaching and learning. But it's a lot better in those spaces than it is just trying to toss a group work in the middle of a very rote memorization lecture-based course.
So just to get back to your original question, how much extra effort faculty need to expend to do that? We're not requiring faculty to do this. They're doing it. Right. So it doesn't really matter how much extra effort. The fact that they're doing it means that it's getting done. It might be just a little bit. It could be a lot.
It's often, and they can come to the center for more resources if they want more help, but it's there.
Hi, my name is Henry Nass. I'm wondering, when you have a capability to bring courses and very high quality teaching to an order of magnitude more by a professor, what do you see happening to the higher education space over the long run, let's say even 5 years from now?
Well, we're thinking a lot about this question, and obviously there's been a lot of hyperbole. I'm not going to sit up here and say there's going to be 10 universities left here in 2 years. I just don't think that that's true. But I do think universities have to adapt and are already having to adapt. There's been a ton of new apartments built all across our campus, and sometimes we wonder about what the data they're looking at, the speculators there. But yet our residential growth continues to...
I don't mean so much at one school, at a center school, but
the whole
to the nation in general.
So the hype curve, right? We're digging our way out of the MOOC hype curve now, and that's kind of where we want to be. We want to show that this stuff is actually useful. We're not putting anybody out of business, but we're finding that this is useful. This is a whole other sector of people that aren't getting educated right now, and that's where it gets back to the land-grant mission, that we can get to those people that we couldn't before. So we're not putting campuses out of business. We're adding the students providing educational opportunities to a larger portion of the population.
Yeah, I do think, however, it's going to take, at Illinois, it takes some of these efforts in the high demand areas that are going to help us be able to continue to do some of the social sciences and humanities that are struggling some, but we so highly value and want to continue doing.
Hi, kind of a logistics question. My name is Kim Hakimian with the College of Physicians and Surgeons. We we're starting to think about putting an online course together where there's been feedback that's been given in person and feedback given, if it's online, it's been in live format, video format. Yeah. So you mentioned you had 30 TAs for 1,000 students. Those are for I think the self-correcting assessments. What do you do for assessment feedback that is not the autocorrect? I mean, how can somebody online contact one of those TAs in a live format?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Coursera's facilitated a lot of that for us. Coursera has their discussion groups that you can use on the Coursera platform. We don't use those. We use the same tool that we use for our on-campus students, which is Piazza. I like to say that when I teach my on-campus class, nobody shows up for the lecture and everybody goes on to this discussion group and asks questions there. Nobody asks questions in class, so I might as well be teaching online. They're using the exact same discussion group, whether they're online or on campus to do that. And in fact, they're interacting that way. There's also, what's the other one, the live one, Slack. They're also using Slack, and that's to facilitate synchronous. And the TAs are monitoring both the asynchronous Piazza questions about academics, as well as the synchronous Slack communications, which is almost like an instant messaging across the entire class. And we find students teaming up in the study groups there and asking, I just came across this problem, how do I figure out this little bit, and somebody will help them out, or the TA will help them out. Or the big one is the assignment's due tomorrow and I press this button and nothing happens, and then the TA or Coursera can manage that. So there's a lot of communication, and there's also email and phone and a bunch of other options, Zoom for group meetings, especially with the IMBA. Yeah. That facilitate lots of modes of communication between the students, both asynchronously and synchronously.
It does vary some across the discipline. So in the IMBA, they actually have 1 to 2 live sessions with the students per week, which they feel is really important, particularly in the business with case studies and the like. And that takes, they have a significant investment in their own studio they built in the basement of one of their buildings. It's really nice. And that's an essential part. So the amount of synchronous interaction kind of varies program to program. There's always some. Sometimes there's more. College of Education has a lot in their traditional. The high school has a lot using various different technologies, but maybe a bit lesser in computer science, where there's a lot of programming assignments.
One last question.
Hi, my name is Justin Saunders from the School of Professional Studies here. I'm just wondering if you could speak to some of the resources that you've dedicated to accessibility compliance.
A lot of different resources. We actually have a disability resources department as part of our College of Applied Health Sciences. Something we take very seriously on campus. We're known for this. We've sent the most Paralympians to the Olympics. And so we take great pride in ensuring that all of our material is accessible to all of our students. And so it's a bit decentralized. We have 2 or 3, actually a whole team of experts in the Disability Resources Center. We also have 2 or 3 experts in our technology services, so central IT. They all work collectively with the Center for Innovation, Teaching and Learning to make those connections in the online courses and programs. You might have noticed the video I played from the course was captioned. So we do a lot of this stuff proactively. So it doesn't put the student in an uncomfortable position to have to even disclose their disability if they don't want to. And we're not just trying to meet the letter of the law, we're trying to go beyond that. And it takes more time, it takes more money, but that's a commitment we've made.
Yeah. And I know that the university has some policies about this in excess of the requirements of law that are forcing Coursera's platform to evolve and provide additional resources. There's been traffic.
They've been good partners, but we've pushed them beyond just, again, meeting the law. We want this, we want that, and they're working on it fast.
So this concludes our Provost conversation on online learning. Thank you very much to Adam and John for coming to Columbia and for a wonderful presentation and lively conversation. And John and Adam will be available for a few minutes after this conversation to interact with you and answer questions. Thank you very much. Have a very nice evening.
Thank you.